Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Phoenix League live stream for Reeving. I'm joined today by a whole bunch of really awesome guests, and before we start, I have a couple things I want to get out of the way. This is the disclaimer. I want to remind everyone that the opinions expressed here are not the be-all and end-all. If you have a method or opinion that is different from one of our guests, I urge you to explore that option and share your feedback with us on the Phoenix League page or in the comments below. That said, our guests are very knowledgeable in their fields, so if you're looking to get started or take yourself to the next level, the info presented here will definitely be worth the watch. Cool? Without further ado, here are some introductions. In the bottom left, returning from our Archer stream, from Whitestone Valley in the Northern Empire, she is an active hockey referee and will be leading discussion about Reeving as a team. Please welcome back Valora. Say hi.
Hello.
In the top left, from Gryphon's Perch, Rising Winds, he is a walker of the middle, master smith, and a veteran Kingdom GMR. Please welcome Kaadiart.
Yo.
In the top right, from Wyvern Spur, Westmarch, she is a walker of the middle, and their current GMR. Say hi to Elysia.
Hi.
And in the bottom right, from Boreal, Goldenvale, he was their recent KGMR and is also a Phoenix League team member. Please welcome Salad.
Hey.
And down in the bottom middle, my name is Wunjo, and I'll be the host today. Hi, everybody. So before we really get into things, I'm going to remind everybody watching and all our Reeves that our focus today is battle gaming. So we're not going to be so much looking at Reeving in a fighting tournament sense, although a lot of the things we are going to talk about can be for sure applied to that. All right, but our focus today is the Phoenix League and battle gaming in general. Cool? So I guess before we get into it, does anyone have anything they want to say before we start, introduction-wise? Or you just want to jump right in?
Jump right in.
Jump right in. All right. So this is my intro question that I provided. Oh, by the way, everyone who's in chat right now, hi chat. If you have questions, just type them as we go, and I'll make note and ask them when appropriate. Alrighty? So here's our intro question. Reeving is the refereeing of Amtgard. It's officiating, it's making sure the game flows properly. How is Reeving different from other sports like soccer, hockey, basketball, or even other LARPs? And how does that affect the way we officiate this game? Would anyone like to start that off?
I say we go with the referee first.
Hey, throwing me under the bus, why don't you? Okay. Sure. So, my example would definitely be I compare it to hockey because that's what I referee. So when I'm refereeing hockey, I definitely think there's a lot of calls in both games, but I think the calls are being made differently, and they're different types of calls. In Amtgard, you have more interactions between players, either on an objective or even not on an objective. Sometimes everybody's fighting everybody at the same time, so you've got more interactions that you got to pay attention to, and more interaction types. So you're not just having, okay, this person's going for a puck, this person's going for a soccer ball. You've got, oh, well, this person's trying to, kill this other person with melee attacks. This person's trying to kill this other person with magic. This person's trying to control this person. So there's more interaction types that you have to understand and know how to call and be able to view properly. You can definitely have way more players on field in Amtgard versus sports. In hockey, you can only have 6 players on the ice at a time for one team, right? A goalie and then your 5 skaters. Sometimes you can even have less when there's penalties. So there's that sort of difference. And in Amtgard, there's less penalties. There's less stopping of the game. Whereas in hockey, you're going to be stopping the game. If somebody does something that's illegal, if somebody makes a play that isn't allowed, if somebody scores, if somebody crosses a line, you've got a lot of stoppages of play. In Amtgard, there's not so much of that stoppage of play. You've got to kind of make calls on the fly, and unfortunately, some of the calls in Amtgard take longer to assess than in hockey. In hockey, we've got it down to, okay, this signal is for this signal is for this, and everybody should know what that signal is, and the game moves on sort of more quickly in that manner. Those are sort of the first few differences that popped to the top of my mind.
Do any of our less referee oriented Reeves want to take a shot at that from the Reeve perspective? How is Amtgard different from sports?
I referee both Amtgard and Bell, and I find it interesting because Bell is far less complex, and Bellegarth has more of an honor system. So their heralding is our reeving, and their heralds are more on the field to make sure that everyone is good to their honor. But with Amtgard, it's not always people taking their shots or not taking their shots. Sometimes it's people not understanding interactions, people not actually, knowing what certain things do. So as a referee of Amtgard, you actually have to read the interactions and the dynamic of the game more than just the players themselves. So with Bellegarth, which is just the contact, no magic, no classes, you have a lot less of a was this shot valid, was this shot not, but more of the nuances of did this actually go through, was this a legitimate play, et cetera, et cetera. So reeving is a lot more interactive. You actually know what's going on in the field. It's not just watching shots.
Anybody else?
I would say that one big part of reeving in Amtgard versus anything else is sportsmanship is a big part of other games, but in Amtgard it's kind of required. It actually says in the rule book that Amtgard requires everyone to have like a certain aspect of honor and fair play. And a good comparison is that of us to a boxing referee. And like if someone gets hit in boxing, they get hit, they get knocked out. They get closer to getting knocked out. And someone gets hit in Amtgard, there generally isn't a difference. It's on that person's honor to call it. So there is a lot more of a honor requirement for all participants to play Amtgard. And while the Reeve is there to kind of enforce that, I don't really know where I was going with that part of it, but
I definitely agree with you. I can see where you're coming from. Because, I don't know if you guys know water polo, or if you guys have played before, but in water polo, it's almost very much unsportsmanlike, or it can get that way, because if something happens under the water and the ref can't see it, it's basically legal, even though it's not legal. So there's a lot of sharpened nails, a couple low blows, a couple knees to sensitive areas that can happen. And it's a sport. You're supposed to be sportsmanlike, but obviously there's not a lot of honor in doing something like that.
Yeah, and not to degrade on hockey at all, but at least in professional hockey, fights break out every once in a while.
That happens in minor hockey too, not as often, and generally it's a full bench brawl, and that's not fun.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So I guess just to kind of summarize what everyone said, one of the hardest things is that Amtgard has a lot more going on, and there's no automatic, it's not a computer game, so all these interactions are not being picked up visually without anyone having to think. People need to actively be doing those, fulfilling all the different effects that are happening as we play.
Yeah.
Anyone have anything to say on that? Anyone in chat have any questions to follow up on that? While I turn my page here. All right. So we're going to go into something nice and basic, a question that's asked every time we do these. For people who want to get into reeving, or who are looking for some good fundamental things to round out their game, what would you all say are the fundamentals of reeving? Things that if you want to reeve, you need to know how to do these.
Well, coming from my officiating background, this is what I would suggest. Having a feel for the game can be an incredibly good quality, not just as a sports official, but I'm assuming also in Amtgard, understanding how the game works and understanding, well, this is kind of where the flow is going, and then that's where you need to be so that you're in the right place to make the right call. And then the other sort of really big ones are judgment, consistency, and standards. You want to make sure that the calls that are being made are reasonable and people appreciate your calls. Not everybody's going to like them, but are they reasonable? Do the calls that you're making remain similar? Are you calling somebody who's out of 20 feet or in 20 feet the same way every time you call it? Or is there some change there happening? Because if your consistency isn't there, people are going to start getting frustrated with you immediately. And then are the calls being made right from the get-go? You don't want to just sort of chill at the start of the game and then all of a sudden start trying to catch up and get on top of the game at the end of the game after things have already gotten out of hand. So that would be my background. Tips?
My first thing I tell people is you don't have to know everything. Even if you're not aware of the rule or you don't know how interaction works or you're not 100% sure, your job is to adjudicate the situation that's on the field at the time. So it's not about being right or knowing every interaction or knowing every incant or knowing every specialty. It's about making a call right then and then having that dealt with later. Of if you're wrong, go ahead. Like, that's fine. But your entire job is to resolve the situation while it's happening on the field as quickly and as fair as possible. So it's not about being right or assuming you are right. It's about just actually clearing the situation.
That actually plays into the question we got here in chat, which is about, I guess, confidence and strictness, and how do you be more strict? How do you assert that officiativeness? Like, how do you be a reeve, and how do you make sure people are respecting your role on field? What are better ways to do that?
Don't seem like you know everything. Don't pretend that you know something if you're questioning it. You don't have to know 100%. You know, you might say, like, this is how I think it is in the rule book. I'm going to call on it now. We can check it later. Let's resolve this after. Mm-hmm. And a good deal of time, it comes down to, I don't know what this does. Explain it to me. Then we'll make a call. Let's move on from this.
Kaadiart or Salad, anything on that?
A big thing I'll like to talk to reeves is, why do you want to be a reeve? And I think that's a very valid question, because I've seen some people get into reeving not because they want the games to flow faster, but because they perceive that these people or this group of people are cheating, and they want to jump on the field and come down hard on these people, or they want to make reeving all about them and not about making games flow better. And I've seen reeves jump on the field and start making call after call after call. And that can be a bad thing. Like, it's not your job to see everything and make every call. It's your job to make sure the game flows smoothly.
Yes. So I guess going off of that, how do you deal with pushback then when someone is actively doing the opposite? When you make a call and they're hitting you hard and being like, no, I don't want to. You're wrong.
You deal a lot with that in hockey, actually, believe it or not. A strange thing that. You get a lot of coaches, you get a lot of fans, you get a lot of players who you're telling, no, you really need to go to the box now. This was my call, and you're going to listen to me. You're only human. You will make mistakes. I think we've kind of touched on that a little bit. You have to remember that. You can't be that ref out there who's being a jerk, who's just got this attitude that he's always right or she's always right. You have to have some humility, but you do need to be confident and always stay calm. You're actually 10 times more scary and 10 times more legitimate if you stay calm. If you lose your cool, your call is now void. Nobody's going to take you seriously because you're losing it, and it's your job to stay calm. So you got to make sure you keep your calm and be confident. You made a call. You're not going to change it. You got to stick with it. You can't be like, actually, you know what? I'm going to change it to this now, and I'm not going to do this anymore. Or, oh, I was going to make this call, but you know what? I'm just going to quietly, not call that anymore. Nobody's going to take you seriously if you can't be confident in your call. So even if you think you may have not quite made the right call, stick with it, follow it through. That's the call you made,
Be
and you've just got to go with it.
I
Be
say the reeve is always
confident.
right, even if you're the reeve.
Yeah.
Pardon?
I say the reeve is always right, even if you're the reeve, so you have to listen to your own calls.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
Yeah, a lot of it's just assertiveness. But you don't want to be too much of an asshole about it, you know?
And that's where the staying
Yeah.
calm comes in too, right? Don't get angry.
Be confident. Confident. That's the pun of the show today. That's what we're doing. Hashtag be confident.
What's important is like the ability to speak up. If you don't have the confidence to speak up, you're just never going to be effective as a reeve.
Yeah. One thing I'll say though is if you do have another player arguing with you on the field, that's considered like one of the worst things you can do in Amtgard is argue with the reeve. You have the absolute right to take a stand against that player and say, no, I'm right. And by the way, don't argue with the reeve, you're dead. You don't have to be angry about it. You don't have to be an asshole about it, but that is something that you kind of do have to do. If a player's consistently arguing with the reeve,
Yeah,
you have to deal with that player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you always have the ability to throw them off field, but if they're really a jerk, you take the monarchy and they deal with it.
Yeah.
So
There's
we
always the
have
next level.
we do have a question asking. So, in a situation where you are a solo reeve, where you are the highest authority in that case on the field, and you have no backup, quote unquote, what is the best way? Is there there are ways to deal with it when you have multiple people versus when you're solo, right?
I think it's a culture thing that we need to be aware of if you argue, you're dead. You need to call them dead, regardless of if it's a simple, disagreement or starting to really get in with you. As a reeve, if you argue with a reeve, you are dead. And you, as a reeve, need to enforce that. This is a culture thing we want for all reeves across the entire land, across the entire kingdoms, across the entire country. So it's a matter of, one, getting the common knowledge out of if you argue with a reeve, you're called dead. And that's what's going to happen. So even if you think that you can persuade them on the field that they are wrong and you can actually make a difference, don't argue at all. Just call them dead, tell them we'll talk later.
Yeah, your job as a reeve isn't to make them understand. Their job as a reeve is to keep the game flowing smoothly.
Exactly.
And speaking from the Phoenix League perspective of things, it's important that the players also know that process, right? That okay, reeves are going to call errors, and you have to take them, and they can be wrong, and you have to, take them as they come, and then we will deal with any potential errors later. But the calls are being made in the moment in their best they can.
The only time I've seen it okay to argue with the reeve is a conversation that happens like this. It's like, that hit you, you're dead. No, I didn't hit him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone says,
So
I didn't hit that person. That's fine.
here's another question that's coming in. We've got a lot of questions coming in that are related to this, so this is good. The question is, how do you deal with the situation where I'm gonna put the situation. I'm gonna put an example here. How do you deal with someone who needs a range call or has a question for the reeve and they get attacked shortly after? Like someone's cast a spell, their opponent says, no, I'm out. That person says, yeah, I'm in. They're trying to get a reeve. While they're trying to get a reeve's attention, someone comes by and kills them. How do you guys deal with that? And what do you think should be the way we deal with that?
The way I deal with it is, technically the rule book says if you're talking to a reeve, you're out of game. And even if it's in preemptive trying to talk to her, you basically close.
Well, interesting. Stand by, everybody. I'm the only one still alive. There is no internet connection. Hello.
You good?
Welcome back, everybody. I guess the internet just left. Chat, if you can still see everything, welcome back.
Weird.
All right.
What were we talking about?
What we were talking about was
Where'd you cut off at?
the last thing you said was the last thing that would be that would have been delivered because this is live.
Okay.
So. All right. So, back on topic is if a player is doing something or trying to get a hold of a reeve and they get hit while they're talking to a reeve, or a more wide time frame type thing. Let's say I cast a spell on somebody. That person argues about the range of my spell. While that argument is going on, and while I'm going to get a reeve, there is another person who has already started casting on me. I go to get a reeve halfway through that guy's incant. Does he become immune to that spell just because I started talking to a reeve halfway through? How do we deal? Like, these are the weird situations of Reeving and Amtgard where we need to make calls for that. So how would you guys deal with that? This is a question from chat. I'm not just, this wasn't one of my random crazy corner case topics. So how would you guys deal with a situation like that? Or what is your
I would say there's no hard and fast rule for dealing with that. The answer is honor and fair play.
Yeah.
If, like, on that particular one-off situation, if that was not representing something that happened regularly, I might just say, okay, that person's alive, and in my opinion, it's not that honorable to hit someone who's obviously not paying attention to the game, trying to get a hold of the reeve, So at that point, I might talk to the player who hit them and said, like, "Oh, you're still in game, whatever." But it also depends. Is this person regularly like asking for a range on every spell that hits them? Because if that is, like, that person is disrupting the flow of the game somewhat regularly. Like, we can't have a hold call between members and range out every spell. Like, take a look at this. You would have to take a look at the spell, have that person take a look at the spell, and just make their best call. Like, the reeve shouldn't have to call everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if at the same time, if someone's like trying to get a reeve's attention, like every time they feel that they're in danger, just because, oh, you can't attack me, I'm talking to a reeve. That's another situation.
So it's case by case and depends on how often the particular people involved bring it up. But in general, we want to try to make it fun and casual when you're playing casually, and not make it abusive when it's casual, right?
Yeah.
Sorry if I said casual like 7 times.
I'd say, like, when we play in a smaller field, we usually have one reeve, if even one reeve, because we don't always have enough people to, like, play a full battle game and have a reeve. But if there is one reeve and there's, like, needs to be a range call, and the 2 players in it, and, like, they actually have to, like, count it out because for whatever reason it's really, really close. Generally, if somebody, like, I'll shoot them because I usually play archer, and they'll be like, no, we're doing a reeves call, like, just give us a couple seconds, and, like, or if somebody casts magic on somebody because they didn't realize they were doing a reeves call, they'll just be like, look, don't waste that magic, but that doesn't count, everything's fair, everybody's happy, nothing got wasted, nobody got killed unnecessarily. So I mean, it kind of depends on the situation, and you just gotta, like, make sure that everybody's happy at the end of the call, or everybody's equally unhappy at least.
It's fairness, not just it has to be good or bad.
I usually go on the side of having people not take things, but
yeah,
it's just easier that way. But I don't want to punish a person for going to get the reeve and not paying attention to the game.
So that actually plays nicely into this next thing. What to watch if you are on a field where you're one reeve, or let's say you're 2 reeves even. Where do you watch when there's a big game going on. So I will look at this in two forms. One, when there's no objectives, right? When it's just people. And a second form when there is objectives, like a ball or a zone or a flag. Go.
Well, way too often, I think people expect Reeves to be the one to constantly be watching over to see if that shot was valid or not. And I think for most part, when I'm actually reading a field, I will passively watch the entire field until something actually, like a tension area comes out. There is a lot of people fighting in one area, it's going to get intense, there's going to be calls that need to be made. Or someone starts arguing, or if something actually starts happening, it's more of a passively watching for general things, just if it catches my eye, until something actually comes up that's going to need attention, like a larger brawl or two players that seem to be getting more aggressive than normal. So it's more about locations and where you will see a problem arising, then going to that more than trying to watch everything at once.
Valora, do you have anything from the referee perspective on that?
A little bit of repetition, maybe, about sort of like having a good field of view. One of the things you always want to do is you want to be in a position where you don't have people behind you, or you have as few people behind you as you can, and you're angling yourself so that your vision, you have as many people as you can in your vision. And then definitely, it happens in hockey, it happens in sports, it happens in Amtgard. You get to know the people that are problems on your field for calls, and you watch them. It's a part of the game. It's part of hockey. It's part of soccer. It's part of Amtgard. There are people who have trouble hearing magic, or taking arrow shots, or maybe doing this or maybe doing that. And if you know them, you know that you need to watch them as they're going through the field, and that can help the flow of game. And then I think this has already been said as well, just like concentrated areas, specifically for me, where I feel like in Amtgard when I'm playing, that problems can be, would be like areas where lots of magic is being casted, or areas where lots of projectiles, including arrows and throwies, etc., are being thrown. Because that's when, oh my gosh, what just hit me? Was that a spell ball? Was that a projectile? Was that an arrow? What type of specialty arrow was it? And like having a reeve who's watching can be like, that was poison, you're dead. That was pinning, you're stopped. That was this. And then that way you don't have as much yelling back and forth between the lines and people going, I got hit by something, but I have no idea what I'm taking. And you've got somebody there to be like, this is what it was. Don't worry, I'm right here. I saw the whole thing. It was totally within this footage or whatever.
Feedage.
So, feedage. It's a new word.
And that's actually going to tie in really well to the next block of things I have. But I have one more thing I want us to talk about before we move into that. Does anyone have anything else on that last topic about what to watch? I'll take that as a no. Once again, chat, if you have any questions, just type them in and I will read them when they are good to be read. So this last issue in the, I guess, fundamentals section is, how do you physically move? Because I think sometimes certain reeves, especially like newer reeves, kind of feel like since they're essentially immune to combat, that they're also immaterial and invisible, and that they can stand in the middle of combat and players will pass through them. What suggestions do you have for moving and being active on the field without being in the way?
Let me just shoot this down now. When you are a reeve, or when you're a referee, or officiating anything, you have this giant bullseye on you. Oddly enough, nobody's ever looking at you. They tend to have their head down, they tend to be looking at an objective of some sort, and they will run into you. They will hit you. So it happens in anything, Amtgard included, I think. So don't think that you're immune. Make sure that you're always aware of your surroundings. And I think if you're paying attention and you're making sure that you're to the outside of the play, but close enough that you can see everything that's going on, and that you're moving to get the right angle constantly, I think that goes for most sort of scrummages of any sort. That's a good position to be in.
Anything else on that?
Yeah, I'd say don't stay too close, but don't stray too far. Like, you want to be able to see the shots, but if you're in range of getting hit, don't be there. Like, if you're within sword's reach of a misfired shot, don't be there.
Yeah, I think generally you want to stay to the side of all the action. It gives you the best ability to see shots and things that move across your field of vision. But obviously you don't want to be close to anyone.
What about when you're dealing with lots of long-range combat and range combat starts moving around you? How do you recommend moving in those situations? Like if archers are doing these big runs behind you, which way do you move in those cases?
More of a common sense thing. You want to basically move out of everyone's line of fire. If you feel that you're in a spot, the optimal place to stand is a place where you can see everything and you aren't in anyone's direct line of fire or anything like that. You aren't interfering with the game in your position.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best way to try to do it is to not ever be between two people.
Yeah, definitely.
Good rule of thumb.
I'd also say talk to them. You're not silent out there. Your job is to communicate. One of the biggest things that we try and get level 1 referees to do is communicate with players on the ice. Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm in your aim of fire. Watch out for me. Hey, I'm in front of you. Your head's down. You might hit me. Or just talk to the players on the ice, and also talk to the players that are around you on the Amtgard field. Hey, I'm getting out of your way. Hey, I'm behind you. You're backing up into me. Whoa, be careful. Like, communicating is an incredibly effective way to try and avoid injuries, I think, too. So maybe keep that in mind.
Also, not sneaking up on people. Having them know that you're a reeve and not an enemy player coming up on them is huge. Like, if their back is to you and they see a player behind you, their automatic response is going to be trying to attack them to get the player off of them. So also specify, hey, I'm a reeve, I'm behind you. Note that.
Yeah, just like in the restaurant business, communicate whenever you're behind someone.
Yeah.
That actually plays into one more thing I just thought of that I'm going to throw in here. Making sure that you look like a reeve. I've seen some people reeve with a sword. And then, like, while they're reeving, they're just kind of like... right? So if you're going to reeve, make sure you've got the sash and that it looks gold and not like a wizard sash, right? Make sure that you're not carrying weapons or spell balls or your pouch. If you have another thing that you're wearing that might look like a class sash, make sure that that's off. You want to look like a reeve so you don't get pulled into combat, and also you're reachable if you need to be reached.
Yeah, I've heard stories of people that wear sashes that don't look gold. They're like crumpled up, and then a guy hits them, and then they call them dead because they're getting angry about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good.
Fun
I don't think Amtgard has ever really had a good distinguisher for reeves.
One thing
Like,
I'd love
most
to do.
sashes aren't
Sorry.
really that gold.
I made all my reeve sashes.
Yeah.
One thing I want to do with the
think
Phoenix
metallic.
League
Yeah.
would be just get actual referee, like ref striped tabards, and then have a gold sash in addition to that.
I've always liked the SCA's way of doing it. Have the pole, like you can't miss that, and it's not a weapon clearly.
Oh, that'd be cool. That's cool.
That's neat. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's
Fun
a
fact.
conversation.
Yeah, there's an entire section for for officials. There's an entire section in the handbook that's basically like, this is how you have to arrive to the games. You need to look smart. You can't wear jeans. You can't wear ball caps. You can't wear team colors, like et cetera, et cetera. You have to, look like an official off the ice as well as on the ice, and it's all part of like the professionalism. So looking like you're a reeve, looking like you're an official is incredibly important. There's like 2 whole sections on how to take care of yourself and how to look like an official. When you get into officiating at higher levels.
I would also say that if someone mistakes you for a player and hits you, don't call them dead. That would be definitely an abuse of
Don't
power.
do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
You give them a bad name.
I mean, you can fuck with them a little bit.
We've wasted our 1 F-bomb. Thanks.
Yay! Yeah, we have PG-13, which means we're allowed 1.
Yeah, that was our one. Well used. All right. So I'm gonna take it on. We're gonna go now to some things Chad has been asking for. It's also nicely our next topic. These are gonna be how would you reeve, or how give us some tips on how you would reeve certain situations. Now these aren't like application questions. These are what are good ways to reeve this type of thing. So I'm gonna go. We're gonna start with a nice easy one. When reeving, sloughing. Someone comes up and says so and so is sloughing, or there's complaints about sloughing. How do you go about dealing with that? You haven't, let's say you haven't seen it, or let's say you did see some sloughing. Give me situations dealing with sloughing and how you handle them. Don't everyone speak at once.
So sloughing is a weird. That's a weird subject because it depends on the person doing the accusing of sloughing. It depends on the person who's being accused of sloughing. I've seen some people who like accuse everyone of sloughing. Like they think they're the best fighter in the world, and everyone sloughs them all the time. And it just doesn't happen that way. But then I've also seen the other end of the spectrum where somebody is well known for not taking their shots. And in the first case, like I don't want to get caught up too much talking to that person because you're supposed to be looking at the game, you're supposed to be reeving. So just acknowledge what they said and move on. In the case of somebody who is known to be a slougher in that area, like, and you know them to be a slougher, then yeah, keep a close watch on them and maybe take them outside of the game afterwards and say, like, look, a lot of people say you've been, not taking your shots and stuff like that. Try to be better at doing that. Like a lot of new players will be, will either call everything or call nothing. So that's kind of how you want to handle that.
It's also probably one of the biggest things where you'll get pushback when you try to address the players as well. When you be like, hey, people are saying you're sloughing, they'll just, no!
I try to make it a lesser of a situation. I don't try to draw attention to it. So I'll thank them for telling me that this person isn't taking their shots. I will tell them, I will keep a closer eye on it to make sure that they're calling your shots, and I'll talk to them. But I just basically clear the situation of thank you for telling me, now go back to the game. If you don't want to deal with the situation, don't combat them. Don't, if it's a big enough game, just go find another area. Let me, clear the situation of this area. And then when I'm actually on the field, I'll try to pay more attention to when they actually get in combat. Like she was saying earlier, you want to watch the players that you have been alerted to. Of this might be a problem, watch this area. Like keep an eye on this closer. And then specifically afterwards, I'll be like, hey, you might want to think about taking your shots or not taking your shots. They pay more attention to these types of shots. Like try to make it a constructive criticism of, you seem to be taking more of your back shots than you should, or not taking your back shots. You should pay more attention to that. Make it more about, I'm trying to help you more than I'm trying to call you out and bring you down. But make it more about the constructive criticism more than the, you're not taking your shots, do better about that.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I might add is if you are going to make a call, like if you do see a clear shot that was a kill that somebody's not taking, say it confidently and be like, hey, I saw that shot land, and stick with it. And they should listen to you. As we said before, if they're not listening, there's ways to deal with that. And then the other thing that we use at our field sometimes is, hey, did that shot hit you there? And you make the person think about it. And then they go, oh, yeah, you know what, I think it did. And then they'll go die, or they'll take a limb or whatever, so it's sometimes they're just not thinking, like their computing power isn't quite as synced up as it needs to be. And so like they'll take a shot on the arm, they won't feel it, and they'll just keep going. And then you'll be like, hey, did that hit you on the arm? And then they'll go, oh, yeah, it did. Okay, I lost my arm. So sometimes it's just like the delay by asking them helps them move forward, especially if they're a newer player. A lot of the time newer players have trouble thinking about fighting and thinking about the shots they're taking and counting this and counting that and worrying about magic. So sometimes just being nice and asking first is a good way to get them to think. Did that hit me? Okay, no, it didn't, or yes, it did. This is what happened.
Do you guys feel that positive reinforcement for taking the worst of certain calls, of certain options, is something that could help with sloughing? So if someone gets hit in a questionable area, let's say like right on the shoulder, that zone, and if they take a death rather than taking an arm, if you just give them that, like, nice call, whether or not, what actually could have been, do you think encouraging people who take the worst decision could help? Because no one's going to argue, like, that guy's taken too many of my kill shots. He should still be alive. Screw that guy.
I tell them, sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they're not aware. And so I'll tell them, hey, that was probably an arm shot, but good on you for taking it, or good on you for just choosing to. Mm-hmm. But next time, you should know that was actually an arm shot. Or I'll actually let them know what the answer is, but let them make their own choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on. Chat's talking about lizards, so we'll... Oh. Apparently lizards slough. So
their skin. It's like a snake. Snakes slough their skin every so often. I'm assuming so do lizards.
Oh, all right then.
Yeah.
Shout outs to lizards. So next thing is tips for reeving. Sorry, I'm going to stop clicking this pen. For reeving magic. How do you go about reeving magic in a battle game? It's probably the most non-visual aspect of this game, therefore one of the hardest. How do?
Ask.
Yeah.
If something you don't know comes up or you don't know how to interaction, like, ask the player, hey, what spell did you just cast? What does that do? Like, I'm honestly not 100% sure of, like, if my reeves can name every single spell in the rulebook. I don't require them to. So I have a lot of, sometimes it's just be fair, be as fair as you can be while in the field, but if you don't know something, ask.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. There's a couple of big things I look for when reeving verbal magic. The first one, when I first started Amtgard, before I got into magic, I saw a bunch of people casting. And I thought that the incantation for hold person, which was the same incantation in V6 and V7, I thought the incantation were the words command stop 3 times. Because people would say command stop, command stop, command stop. And they missed the I and they missed the B. It should be more like I command thee to stop, I command thee to stop, I command thee to stop. And I see that all the time. Like it's the back in V7, like the call for death thing. Call for death, call for death, call for death, you know. If like new casters and old casters will miss syllables.
Nowadays, I think the spell balls, the power, I see the drop like constantly.
Yeah, a lot of people drop the first syllable. We used to teach for Finger of Death is that the incantation was I call for your death eye. Get people to say the I part. And
that's good.
And another thing is, our rules require you to declare a target before every spell. Well, for ranged verbals at least, you don't have to do it for things like heal. And a lot of people miss that part out, and a lot of people will take spells for people who miss out on that part. So that's something you really have to pay attention to, because it's a very commonly not done thing. You do have to declare a target before every spell, even if everybody knows who you're casting on, because it is part of the incantation. And that may not matter for most spells because it's only like 1 or 2 syllables added, but for something like Break Concentration, where it's literally I command thee suppressed, or something like Naturalized Magic, that adds like almost 50% to the incantation of the spell. It is a big deal to have to declare someone as target. It does extend the length of the spell purposely, and if you don't come down on it, then you, like people who have trained themselves to use use the person's name as an private incantation, you're punishing them by saying, oh, they don't have to do that.
Yeah. I see a lot of people who just declare class. I think that's good enough.
Okay,
Point in a general direction, say healer.
Yeah,
You're
a lot of
dead.
reeves don't know that too, though. So it's like they have to be. It's a culture thing that needs to be clarified. So it's name or class and descriptor, and a lot of people use one or the other and just assume that it's fine. So it's a culture thing that you need to actually like make aware in your field if this is actually how it goes, and then teach all of the reeves that.
Especially class and descriptor.
And
So it needs
descriptor.
to be like purple warrior, not just warrior.
Exactly.
Now in Phoenix League, this is kind of moot because everyone has numbers. You can reference them by those numbers.
Which is very awesome. It's so much easier. But we have actually, in the latest update, we did clarify it that you can't just say like 24. It needs to be number 24. Just to keep the amount of syllables big enough so you can actually hear, right? And for example, we have someone on our field named Sticks, right? That sounds like 6. So we don't want someone to be like 6, say something, and he thinks people are casting at him. But so now if you hear number 6.
Yeah, I can see people like starting to make persona names that are numbers.
Yeah, our character are numbers, so that doesn't work for us.
What's your character name? Number 3. What's your actual number? Number 7. Number 3 is our third baseman. Okay. Just one thing that we didn't quite get to, range calls. How do you deal with range calls as a Reeve? Now in Phoenix League, we were making an effort to have the field surrounded by 20-foot kind of visual guides. But in a normal casual game or at your normal field, you don't have that. So what are some tips and tricks you go about for making range calls?
I take my reeving very seriously, and I have actually taken a tape measure out before even getting onto the field, and like to measure what is 20 feet? Okay, this visually in this field right now is 20 feet, and then I can eyeball it for the rest of the game. But if it's a new field and I've never reeved on it before, I'm like, I have no idea what 20 feet is, so I'll actually go out there and measure it sometimes. But I take my reeving very seriously.
I think a lot of times what happens is Reeve doesn't see what the range was, and then players are like, yo, is this good or not? And then you have to like backtrack, find out where they were. It's a hassle.
I say it's actually less about what actually happened and what's more fair at the time.
Yeah.
So even if you didn't see, and even if someone was sure that was 20 feet, it's better to just adjudicate the situation regardless and try to be as fair as possible, and then just move on.
I think it's definitely harder when you have no landmarks to help give you. If you're on just like a empty soccer field or an empty park field, you're just like, oh well, that daisy to that blade of grass is. But if you have trees, then you kind of can be like, okay, I'll measure the distance from these 2 trees, and now I've got a pretty good idea for certain things. Any other things on that? Someone's got a phone call? All right, moving on. Next thing, this falls kind of in the same area as magic. How do you guys deal with projectiles? Specifically things like arrows, which can be fired from out of your field of view and can just kind of come into your field of view. Or have different effects. Stuff like that. What are some tips or tricks or suggestions you have for reeving specifically projectiles?
I think projectiles are a lot easier because you don't have to actually see if they hit or not, just whether or not they made any amount of contact, because grazes count.
Everyone still here?
We good?
No.
I mean, what specifically about projectiles?
If you guys don't have anything to add about projectiles, we can just move on. Just if you guys have anything when dealing with projectiles. Like at our field recently, one of the issues we're having is people will take, for example, the pinning part of a pinning arrow, but not the damage, or they'll take the damage and not the pinning, right? Or, for example, a reeve will be watching and the arrow will fly in from out of their range and they won't be expecting it, so they're not watching for it, kind of thing. And now the archer is being like, I hit this person, and the person being hit is like, do you have any stuff specifically to deal with that? Or is it just case by case?
I know all the problems. I shoot lots of people and they don't take it. But
I think it goes back to just being fair. I mean, even if you don't see a shot and if you don't see a call or you don't see if it actually hit or not, just try to adjudicate the situation. It's less about who's right and who's wrong and more about getting more people playing again. So,
more about getting it going. Yep.
Yeah.
There's
That's
a lot
good.
that simple conversation would solve. For example, if someone says like, "Hey, I hit that person," and you say, "Did that hit you?" and they say, "Oh, it just hit my shield," but it's a pinning arrow, they might not know that it's engulfing and they're pinned.
I mean, I guess it's just kind of like battlefield awareness. If you happen to see it, you can quickly make sure that that person is taking whatever it is that hit them. If you didn't see it, you've just got to make your best judgment call and move on. And hopefully the archer or whoever's shooting the arrows is like, hey, that was a pinning arrow, engulfing stopped, you're stopped for 30 seconds, and then moves on. Like, they're taking care of the situation themselves as well as a player.
Yeah.
Because you can't do everything yourself as a reeve. There's one of you and like 30 of them, or more, or less, but generally more. And you've got a lot to take care of, so the players have to kind of reeve themselves a little bit too, to a certain extent. That's that honor thing, I think, coming back in again as well.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about that. The players need to help make the game work. They are also, cogs in this great game that's moving around, and they can't rely on the reeves to be the only ones spinning. What is communication, I think, is the one thing you guys have brought up a lot for how players can help. Making sure they are the ones actively, verbally saying what they need to happen, rather than doing something and then looking at the reeve and being like, right? How do you have any other suggestions for how players can help make the game more smoothly? Things that you wish players would be doing more rather than just following the rules, right? Like things that you think players can do to help.
Probably not rely on the reeve so much. Like, this is more of a tournament thing, but every tournament reeve will tell you about the situation where two players come on, very obviously simul against each other, and then immediately look to the reeve to make the call. And like I've said before, it's an honor-based game, and the reeves can't really see everything. So, and I've seen we can't play this game because we need more reeves. That's absolutely not true. Yeah, the game won't be as streamlined, as quick, as smooth, but people's honor should come way before a reeves call. Like, the reeve should not be the thing that you go to when honor fails.
Chat here is saying, read the rule book. So obviously familiarize your stuff with as much as you can, and learn the distances of 20 and 50 feet.
Yeah, that's an important one, especially if you're playing a magic caster or an archer of somebody. Make sure you know what 20 feet is. Make sure you know what 50 feet is, because that's really helpful. Because then a lot of the time, even if you don't have a reeve on fields, because sometimes on smaller fields you don't even have a reeve, you're just playing. A lot of the time what you'll do is you'll ask a player who was on the side, like a player that was running past, or a player that was like looking at the two players, and like they had a good side view, and they're just like, yeah, I think it was in, or no, that was way out, don't worry about it, keep going. And I think if more people can kind of have that mentality, it's like, look, there was a call here, let's just keep going, I think it was this, I think it was that, and then move on, like not spend too long on it. Then reeving is really for those really tight calls, or those, extra things that need to be taken care of. That's a major difference too between other sports and Amtgard, is that you do have self-reeving. You can kind of self-moderate.
So in Phoenix League, we have the recipient or the target of whatever is happening, the defender. They're the one who has the final call of everything that affects them. That's how we have it set up, right? So if someone casts a spell on them, if they say out, that's the way it's going to be played. And if someone has an issue with that, let's say the person casting on them, they can bring that up to a reeve later, and then the reeve can watch them, right? Now, if a reeve was watching that particular instance, they call out, and the reeve's like, no, you're in, the reeve can override them. But I think having that, the precedent of when two people are arguing, who has the final say, just to keep it going, I think that's important. And I don't know if you guys all play it that way or if you play differently. Would you guys like to talk about that a bit?
Our field
Reeving.
plays similar to that. Although there's one problem with that way, and that's if the person who's being targeted is running away, so their back is turned to the caster, and if the caster is running after them because they've cast Ambulant, now you've got this problem where the player who's being casted at cannot see whether they're in, and you do need to have like a third party, whether that be a reeve or another player, go, look, you were in, look, you were out. But apart from that, generally, sometimes we'll even say out before they finish the incant. We'll be like, look, we're not in it, because like they're just kind of challenging you,
Mm-hmm.
and like you take a couple steps back, you go, I'm out, don't finish, don't bother, I'm not gonna take it if you finish, and that's like a nice way of stopping things before they happen, right?
Yeah. In casual play, obviously that has a lot more room for abuse than in something where, like the Phoenix League, where ideally you have,
Yeah.
4, 5, 6 reeves watching the game and are able to take it, note when people are using it abusively rather than just doing it to make stuff move along. Chat's moving.
I think a good thing to keep in mind too for a lot of players is taking a death and actually dying is a part of the game, and you need to remember it's a game. So actually keeping the flow and keeping people entertained and having fun is a huge part of it. So if you just want to tank and pretend that you can't die, that's not fun for anyone. And if you're actually in there and making the game better as a player, you're going to make the game a lot better for yourself too.
Mm-hmm. So cooperate, just general willingness to want to work together with everyone else playing the game is important.
Yeah.
Okay. Just because this is a Phoenix League thing, if you take it to a competitive level now, where people want to win, where they're not necessarily friends, where they're playing because they have to play, now it's a whole other bag of animals. So how would you address something in those situations? Because now you've got people who, he's definitely in, and the other guy's like, I am totally out. You need to kind of make some sort of decision there for if you're not seeing it. How would you prefer, how do you think that should go? Like I said, we made our ruling where the defender, if they're obviously not abusive, is always the one who trumps in those situations. Do you feel that is good? Some chat is saying that they don't necessarily agree with that for the reasons that Valora listed.
I think there's always situations. You're never going to make a be-all, end-all. This is how you deal with every single situation that you come across in a game. It's a game. It's moving. People are always finding new loopholes. People are always finding new ways to play the game. And you're always going to have to assess the situation as it comes along. In a situation where there's two players that are constantly arguing, let's say they're siblings per se, and they're always, whenever they're on the opposite team, they're always constantly calling each other, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out, and you've got like this, they're always arguing, and they're usually arguing over things really semantics, and a lot of the time they're calling people in when they're actually out. You've got to use your judgment and be like, look, I think he was fine. He's saying he's fine. You're going to have to go with it. I didn't actually see that. and then in the future, note in your mind that you now need to watch those two and make sure that you do see in the future whether they're in, they're out, and what's going on. If it's, you know, a once-off thing, two really nice players just had a bit of a conflict at one moment in time because it was really important in that game for that second that call needed to be made, you need to make the call and confidently stick with it. They may not like it, but they're going to have to deal with it because that's the call that was made. And don't waver. Make the call and move on, because there's not much you can do. You just got to deal with each situation as they come.
Be confident. Confident.
Yeah, that thing again.
All right, so let's move on to the next section. Any tips and tricks for reeving armor? Armor comes in a lot of different forms. Some are visible, some are not visible. Do you guys have any particular rays for reeving armor? Especially, you know, when you have 2, 3, 4. I think 4 points is probably the weirdest one because of how they tick down.
Mm-hmm.
Anything for that, or?
As a general, like, I like to keep people honest with it, and so even if it's just like, as a reeve, asking, so how many points do you have left? If they're out of or if they're moving around, just how many points do you have currently? Of just having them mentally check in with how many points each place has gets them to be more aware and conscious. So they think the reeve is just asking you in order to make sure, you know, you still have armor in certain places, but really it's me checking in to make sure that they're aware of how much they have in certain places.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
I think one of the bigger things is really hard for people to tell when they get hit and they have armor on. And I think the easiest way to deal with that is to not, well, think of it like this, like, unless you could tell something wasn't a hit, you should take it as one.
Do you have any,
Because,
can you elaborate on that a bit?
Like, I mean, you're going to get grazes the same way you do with or without armor. But if a reeve can't tell that it's a graze, but one of you know that there's contact, you should probably take it, because you don't have the dynamic of the audible pop and the dynamic of the stop and deflection is going to be totally different on a metal surface versus skin or leather or whatever.
Anything else on armor?
Sort of. So armor cover, like, it's been clarified that armor covers hit locations, and if something only hits the armor and it wouldn't have hit the hit location if the armor wasn't there, then it actually doesn't count. So
Dangly chain.
Yeah, dangly chain, but like a breastplate or something. If something just barely grazes the front of your chest, it might not have hit you if that armor wasn't there.
Oh wow, I never even thought of that.
Yeah. So, but a big part of taking shots in Amtgard is making sure that the shots that come in are clean. If the shot that came in isn't clean, then it wasn't a shot. And that's where the audible pop and stop and deflect comes into play. That said, I agree with you. If something like would have hit you if the armor wasn't there, then take it, you know. Like, if it's questionable, take it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you don't know, just take it. It's easier for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have problems with people wearing not just armor, but like knee pads. So I'll hit or skim their knee pad with an arrow, and then they'll go, "Oh, it was knee pad. It didn't hit me." And I find that really irritating because that arrow grazes count with arrows, and I think that definitely would have hit your knee if your knee pad wasn't there, but you're just calling it for that. So, and it's not even armor. It's an extra sort of thing that you're wearing and stuff like that. So,
I'm sure chat is also curious. For armor, or for things that are not armor, do they work the same way? So if you're wearing like a, I guess they work the same way. Don't mind me.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna sit here.
Yeah,
And
if you have some garb that hangs off. Well, garb's not a good example because you can usually tell.
Basically, the knee pads was what I was thinking of.
Yeah, knee pads.
Yep. All right. So moving on from there, we're almost done our list of how to reeve certain situations. So This next one has been asked in chat. Gray areas. When you're dealing with something that comes up as a gray area, whether it was intentional or not, because we all have fields where people will show up, they'll have read the rules, and they'll be like, oh, but this wording plus this wording equals I can be a dragon in this battle game. And then they show up and they try to do it. How do you address gray areas? And I feel this is kind of going to be similar for everybody. So, go.
Well, the rulebook specifically says no gray areas. Like, that's the entire point of the no gray area of rule part, is there isn't supposed to be, you're not supposed to be cheating the book. You can't min-max this game because there are reeves in the field saying, hey, safety's first, but, fairness and then thematic considerations and such. So the entire point is, if someone's not having a good time because they're getting, completely swamped by someone that's trying to min-max, that's not fun for the entire field. And, it might be fun for them because they're whomping everyone, but I would say even if the rulebooks say it's possible, as a reeve, you need to balance things.
For some of the newer reeves, sorry, I'm going to cut you off, Denny, real quick.
That's
for
okay.
some of the newer reeves, they might be thinking, how do I know when something is a gray area versus just a unique combination of an actual strategy? And I saw people talk about a lot. They will say, if when you're explaining it, you need to use the word technically, then it's a gray area.
Yeah. One thing I'll say is that gray areas happen. The rules say you can't take advantage of a gray area. And I remember getting into this, a very specific, well, what if this on this particular thing? Suppose you're dead and there's a whole bunch of combat happening around you. The rules say that you can, as a dead player, move to get out of combat, and move to get out of that combat situation to not interfere with it, and you don't count as having moved after having died. And that's a big part of Amtgard. If you move after having died, you can't come back into play unless you go to respawn, which means you can't really be rezzed and that sort of thing. So that's cool. But then, what if someone says, oh, there's a combat situation, I guess I gotta move, and then go straight to their healer? Little things like that. That's taking advantage of the gray area. But at the same time,
Technically.
Yeah, technically.
Yeah.
And then there could be people hey, we better start fighting around this dead guy, so we'll have to move, and then we'll call him out on it because he's surrounded by healers, that sort of thing. So
I've never heard of that one, actually.
Quick, let's lure the combat to our dead barbar and then just keep fighting around him until he's back at our base.
Yeah, exactly. When you're taking advantage of things like that, you're not supposed to be taking advantage of, and that one example can apply anywhere. If someone is and the bottom line is, if somebody is being dishonorable or using the rules in a way they're not intended to be used, they're playing in a gray area.
Yeah, I think I would say it's very situational. We've all pointed out a couple of different situations. You need to ask yourself, is it breaking the game? And is it making the game not fun for other people? And if you answered yes to either one of those, you need to maybe stop what's happening or change or make a call based on that judgment. If it's something really cool, if it's some unique sort of new weapon design that maybe is a little bit fudgy but you think would be cool, and it turns out to be an awesome thing, it's not breaking the game, it's not ruining anything, but it's a really cool, interesting weapon, then awesome, you've got something new and great for your park to start making and playing with. So make sure you're just keeping in mind the whole sort of judgment thing. You've got to have good judgment. Is it ruining the game? Is it breaking the game? Is this gray area being pushed in a way that's ruining fun for other people? Or is it making the game better? In which case, okay, maybe we should just keep this little thing around that somebody came up with that's really neat.
I always push the hierarchy of safety, fairness, playability, then thematic considerations. So
say that again, slow, just so everyone can, because this is probably good.
Fairness, playability, thematic considerations. It's the hierarchy of reeving. If it's not safe, take it off the field. If it's safe but it's not fair, take it off the field. if it's safe, if it's fair, and it's playable, or it's not like
If
not
it's
working in the same sense, then yeah, go in that order. Thematic considerations should be considered last, safety first.
For anyone who's wondering, as far as gray areas and the Phoenix League, since it is more of a competitive level, we are doing our best at the Phoenix League to try to remove as many gray areas as we can when they come up, so that there are decisions. So if someone's like, "Can I do this?" If it's not the first time it's come up, we will actually have a definitive stance on things. Whereas casual Amtgard, for the most part, follows what everyone else is saying, where it's, safety, fairness, playability, thematic considerations. You want to have fun. So that's the difference between the two. Let's move on. How do you guys reeve injury? So someone gets hurt on the field, and let's say you can, okay. Instances where you can't tell how severe it is, but someone's down, versus instances where it's very obviously a big situation. I know there's a lot of people who like to role play deaths, and sometimes you can't tell if they just died or not, like actually died versus in character died. So how do you guys go about doing that?
Well, I really like to push the idea of in the rulebook, the whole safety versus emergency thing. As much as hold is a cultural thing, the idea of safety is there might be a situation in this area, please avoid it until we can resolve it, and then we'll make a call on it. But in this area, there might be something going on, so just hold off, lay back, call safety on that area, keep things in play, but you can at least investigate it. And then if I'm only like reeve on the field, I'll normally ask another player to like either help them out or like move them off the field, or if there's multiple reeves in the field, I'll have one of the reeves do it. But it's a tendency of I like to side on the side of safety and not on the side of emergency. I tend to like safety calls more than hold calls, just because play needs to continue happening. And even if it's just like, someone got hit in the balls, it only affects them. That's just a call that, they need to deal with. Then I'll just call safety in the area and make sure that everything continues to move on.
I just had this vision of like reeves having one of those little siren hats for when they call safety, and they just kind of like turn it on and then. Anyone else have anything about injury?
Just make sure that like everyone doesn't crowd around the person who's injured.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that people tend to do, and you just have to make it not happen.
One of the things I really do like in Belagarth, if a hold is called or emergency is called, all of the field has to drop to a knee, and so reeves can actually see what's going on and why the situation was called. And I really like that, even if it's not standard in Amtgard. I actually try to do it on my fields. If safety is called, go down so we can see what's going on. Like freeze, drop if you can, so the reeves can actually see what's going on.
I think that's how whole or emergency is. That's what emergency is, right? Everyone takes a knee?
Well, it's everyone stops.
Oh. Well, hold used to be everyone takes a knee, and I think a lot of people that played in V7 will still play that going forward. But it is that's probably good to note that it doesn't say that in V8. So take a knee.
That's something commonly practiced in my field, even though it's not in the rulebook.
Yeah, same here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just kind of a common sports practice, really. If there's anything really severe, most people know to either go to the bench or take a knee or just get out of the way and wait till it's taken care of by the professionals on the field at the time.
All right, so this is our last how to reeve specific situation, unless chat has any specific ones they want to ask before we're done this one. How do you guys deal with, and we talked about this a little bit, attitude, not necessarily just to reeves, but just attitude to other players, to the reeves, just people, those people that are kind of rubbing everyone the wrong way. Players will come to you and be like, "Hey, this guy, right? How
This guy.
this guy?
This guy.
How do you deal with that?"
We actually recently had to deal with something like that at our field. Not disclosing names, but basically there was a lot of complaints about a person in particular, and so basically, there was an original warning, and then more complaints. So there was an original ban for a short period of time. It wasn't a very heavy ban, and then more complaints continued. So then an official warning was actually written up, and then handed from the Baroness of the park at the time, and handed in person to said player, and also mother, because minor, just to make sure that the message was getting across. And it was as polite and official as it could be made, and very clear what the problem was in the letter. And since then, it's really made a huge difference. It's the situation has been improving incredibly. And basically, the warning was, if the behavior continues and complaints continue to come in, another ban of set length of time will then be issued. And basically, just taking care of it that way helped sort of get person thinking in the right direction.
Cool. Not to downplay anything you said, because that's a good flowchart of what needed to do on the long run. The question was more related to in the midst of a game itself. So the actions beyond the game, notwithstanding. So that when you have that attitude.
Yeah, the long-term question is more referring to like an officer,
Yeah.
or not even an officer,
Yeah.
but like someone with a voice.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an officer to bring someone up who.
I think
just to make that clear.
I think the most effective way to deal with players of attitude is calmness, communication, and confidence.
That confidence.
If you get aggressive with a player who already has an attitude, they're gonna push back. That's just the nature of things. So you have to deal with the situation without getting at that level.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to do it confidently, otherwise they won't take you seriously. And you have to be very communicative with what the problem is.
And I think sometimes, especially if the situation isn't getting better with some initial warnings on field, some maybe even some stepping in, like, look, you're not making this game fun for other people. Take an extra long death count, cool down. If that doesn't help, then maybe like, okay, look, you are making this an unsafe environment. You need to leave this game. And, like, maybe you can join the next game. Or if they're just way out of whack, they're really going at it even off field, not just on field. It's like, okay, you can't be here today. You need to leave now. Like, you're not going to be able to participate further because you're not making this a safe environment, because that's one of the most important things at Amtgard too, right? It just kind of depends on how far the player themselves escalates the situation.
Yeah, if they're constantly escalating the situation, don't be afraid to kick them off the field.
Yeah, even if it's just they need to sit out for that span of game, and they can jump in next round. I mean, it's better to have them sit, calm down, actually like mentally compose themselves, then see if that actually helps the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a good tie-in to what tips do you guys have for Reeves that need to deal with, like, they're scared of the people they need to confront. If you're a 5'0" player, maybe you're still 15, 16, 17, whatever, and then you're going up against a 30, 40-year-old knight or someone else who has a lot of clout. And you need to tell that person that they need to, step up or get off the field. How do you build that confidence as a Reeve? Do you have any tips for, other than, believe in yourself? Heart of the cards.
Well, part of it is Reeving culture. Of the whole fact is, regardless of if the Reeve's call is right or wrong, you're supposed to listen to the Reeve. And with with Reeving, with you have that gold sash, you have the authority of all the reeves behind you, all of the reeves before you, all of the reeves that are on the field currently, and all of the reeves who will be on the field. So the power of the gold sash is supposed to come with that authority, so people will listen to that gold sash. So regardless of how long you've been reeving for, if you make that call, the players have to listen. So it's a huge culture thing of you have to know the authority that sash comes with. You don't screw around with the sash, and that comes with you don't get screwed with when you're wearing the sash.
Yeah, I think most people don't want to cheat, or most people like have a respect for the rules at a minimum, and that sort of ties into having respect for the reeve. If a person's just going to cheat and not listen to you, they're probably a problem in general, and it's something you probably bring to your local monarchy. But just like you just wanna interact with every player in every situation the same way, regardless of who they are.
Yeah.
Like interact with the newbie the same way you'd interact with a knight, because they're all players.
Yeah. So don't be afraid. If they're quality people, they will understand. And if they don't understand, then they're probably someone you're going to need to go to a higher authority with anyway. Kind of idea. We all want this game to be a well-oiled machine. Okay, let's see. Let's take a look at chat. Chat's also saying, again, with the players, if you're a player, don't argue with the reeves. As much as you want to, take what they say and discuss it later if you need to, if it's a big deal. Anything else to say on that? Any other tips you want to give for how to reeve specific situations that you might, or shall we move on to something different? We are moving on to something different. All right. We touched on this briefly with what to watch, but we're going to talk about it more. This is Valora's time to shine a bit. We're going to talk about having multiple reeves on the field and the idea that you don't have to just be, 2 or 3 independent reeves, that you can actually work as a team together, and the ideas behind working as a team of reeves to make Amtgard flow well. So we're going to be using some graphics here based on the Phoenix League. So if you haven't seen what the Phoenix League little setup looks like, you're going to see it soon, just because it's the most constant setup. And yeah, so if you guys have any questions about that, let them come in. But we are talking right now about working as a team of reeves when there are more than one reeve on the field. Take it away.
Awesome. Cool. So I wasn't entirely sure what sort of setups to go with, so I came up with a couple of different sort of team ideas for the Phoenix League after reading the rules, and I looked at a bit of the gameplay. And based on my experience from reffing in teams, I came up with a 6-man team, and this is including base reeves. So there's 4 people on field, 2 base reeves, a 5-man team, which would be 3 reeves on field, and then a 4-man team with 2 reeves on field. So starting with the 6-man team, which was, I think, sort of like the ideal number that the Phoenix League was kind of hitting for like tournament-style games. That is picture number 1, I believe.
Yep, it is up right now.
Okay, so my wonderful paint drawing, don't judge. What we have here is the black sort of circles are your reeves, or your people. This is kind of their starting position. Obviously, you've got, I don't know where the base reeves exactly were going to be, so I just kind of put them beside the bases.
Yeah.
I figured good enough. You've got your ball starting in the center. For those that haven't looked at these field setups before, the 2 goals are the blue goal and the red goal at either end of the field, and they're centered. And then I have added in 4 quadrants with yellow lines separating the field. The idea is, if you've got 4 refs on field, you want to work as a team. Well, how do you work as a team? Well, if all 4 of you are looking at the same play at the same time, you're not doing a very good job of covering the field. So the idea of working as a team is that you all know where you should be looking, where you should be standing so that you can cover the area you're looking the best, and you all have the best field of view, and you're covering every aspect of the game so that if something does get missed, it was a really, really small chance that it was going to get missed because you're all looking at different spots of the field. So the arrows here, I've got red arrows and blue arrows on this picture. The blue arrows show where the reeves, I feel, would be in a good position to move to when the ball from the center of the field moves towards the blue net. So that's the blue arrows and the ball, or the egg. Is it egg or ball?
We're calling it a ball
right?
now.
Oh, okay.
No one says egg anymore.
What's the egg? Because then you could put the egg in the nest. I thought it was cute. Anyway, okay, moving on. So, ball moving towards the blue net. The reeve, who is on the side of the base, so the blue base, the reeve, and the quadrant of the blue base, is going to be moving to what I call, and this is picture 2, actually. If you bring up picture 2, I've kind of given them a bit of a name based on like the names that I use in officiating. Obviously they're not set in stone, but it's just to give people an idea of what I think the positions should be. So that reeve moves to at the basket. They are in that sort of gray zone, but they're at the back of the field where hopefully nobody should be running into them. And obviously they have the ability to bump or pivot or move out of the way if they're getting in the way of people trying to score a basket. But the idea is they're watching the ball. That is their job. That ball is coming for that basket, and they want to make sure that if somebody is pegged while holding that ball, they're dead, right? Because anything hits them, they're dead. You've got your half piston position, which is now the other person who's on the left side of that field again, but they're the far quadrant. They're the quadrant away from the base. They're moving into what I would call a half piston position. They're coming up, they're watching sort of behind the play, but they're watching the players all around the person carrying the ball. They're not watching the ball, they're watching the players behind the ball, around the ball, and whatever they may be casting. Then you've got somebody who's in the backfield, so you're looking at your white right top quadrant. They're somebody who's not moving past that center field sort of line. You want them staying back there, but facing the play, so that they're looking at the play from like the big picture. They're catching the stragglers from behind. And if there's somebody behind them, maybe even considering moving back behind them. They want to make sure that most, if not all, the players are in front of them so that they have the best field of view from the back. So they're seeing everything. And then the player in the right bottom quadrant of this picture, I would be calling them sort of like the swing position. So when the ball is at the basket, obviously they're going to be closer to center field because they're kind of following the play of the ball, but also watching the back side of the play. And that way you've got a reeve on all 4 sides of play with all great sides of view so that they can see everything that's happening. I don't know if anybody has any questions about that.
This is good because this is the standard setup where we're looking for as far as... let's see if I can just make this image a little smaller now that we've talked about it so we can see everybody's faces. There we go. This is good because this is kind of what we're going to be doing for our big event for the Phoenix League as far as how many reeves we intend to have on the field. And now how would these reeves go about communicating with each other? Does someone have like a lead position given where the ball is, or...
So the idea of splitting it into quadrants is that I tried to stay away from having like one head reeve when you have 4 people on the field, because then you run into that problem where people are like, oh, the head reeve needs to make this call. Oh, the head reeve needs to make this call. So because there was 4 people, you all have equal power, but you're looking at different things when the ball moves to different quadrants. Which actually, I've got a picture for that somewhere. Okay. Number 5, I think.
You think?
Let me check over here. Yeah, 5.
5 is up.
Okay. So over here, I've made the ball move towards the left lower quadrant. So rather than being at the net, now you're looking at, okay, the ball is definitely in the left lower quadrant. Therefore, the sort of head reeve is that quadrant's ref. That ref is the closest to the play. They are in there and they are watching the ball. That is their job. The ball is in their square. The ball is their priority calling. The reeves on the outer quadrants, now you've got 2 swing players, and you can see with the blue lines, I've drawn in sort of semi-appropriate fields of view, right? So you've got your field of view, like with your binocular vision, and then you've got your peripheral vision, but you want to make sure that your binocular vision, where you're looking, is covering as much of the field as possible to see as much of the play as possible. And the 2 reeves on the left upper quadrant and the right lower quadrant, their job is going to be to move back and forth across the lines, sliding or swinging back and forth to make sure that they're always at an angle where they can see the play the best as they possibly can. And the backfield, again, the top right quadrant, he's staying in that back quadrant, making sure that he's seeing the whole play, making sure that there's no players stuck behind him doing something they shouldn't be behind the play. And so your job changes depending on where the ball is. Does that make sense? Am I making sense a little bit? I don't know.
Yes, you are.
Awesome, thank you.
Chad is agreeing with you. They asked a question that I think you answered in you were explaining this quadrant. Oh no, they're still asking for it. So yeah, conflicting reeves. You covered it kind of in that whoever's quadrant the ball is has the say as far as the ball is concerned. How do you deal with if there are conflicting reeves?
That is okay. Let's see.
I'm gonna make the image smaller again.
I'd say the reeve who is closest to the play, and I know that doesn't necessarily mean that reeve is always going to have the best call, but you got to be communicating as a team. And if a reeve is making a call from one side and they're the closest and they have the best angle for the call, they're the reeve that should be making the call, versus, the backfield reeve who maybe sort of saw something from the back, but maybe wasn't as sure as what the call was. Like, it's the same kind of thing with hockey. I know this isn't maybe the best example for everybody, but like a linesman, even in a 2-man system where you're both reeving, or you're both reffing, you still play the line when your official partner is in the end zone. So your job is mainly the line call, and when your other official is in the end zone, it is their priority to be making those penalty calls and goal calls. Like, you should not be calling a goal from the blue line. It's just crazy. Your call is not as legitimate as the referee who is closer to the play and at the net where they can see whether the puck's crossed the line. So the same thing in Amtgard. If you have a play that's happening really close to the edge of the left quadrant to the right side, then that swing referee in the right bottom quadrant should be making that call, assuming that they've got eyes on it. But if the play is that close, they should have their eyes on it. I don't know if that answers the question. I tried my best. No. That was very, very good.
Just to kind of summarize, it's whoever is the closest to the particular call kind of has the say. Whoever's job is to be closest to that has the say. And if it's an issue where the call is being made live, like is he in range, what hit me, that kind of thing, worst case scenario for Phoenix League, and I guess this could apply for regular battle games as well, whatever the first reeve said, unless it was drastically wrong, just go with that, right? And if the play has to be stopped, they can argue about it later.
If you were not confident in the call you made, you could be like, hey, did you see that? Like, communicate with your partners. You're not that far away. You can ask them. and you certainly do want to communicate. So like if you were kind of looking at the play, but you didn't feel you had the right angle, you could quickly look over to the other reeves to see if they were looking at that particular play and go, did you see a better call than I did? Otherwise, go with what your call would have been. But again, you want to be fast, so make the call, go with it, live with it, move on, work harder at seeing things next time. But hopefully that would help minimize any sort of conflicting calls.
Do any of our other guests have anything to say on this particular idea? Any experience you have working as teams from a non-referee perspective? Multiple reeves working together?
I think it's a little different because the only experience I've had with like really conflicting opinions on reeving is probably tournament reeving, and it's always going to be slightly different. But it's basically who has the clearer line of shot and who can actually visualize, see the actual shot better, and then that's the person with slightly more authority to make the call.
Anyone else have anything?
I'd say as a reeve, don't just use your eyes, use your ears. I do that a lot with shots being called because a good reeve should be able to tell like the difference between like a weapon on weapon, weapon on skin, weapon on garb, that sort of thing. Like those do make some pretty distinct sounds.
Chat is saying, have a game plan ahead of time and talk to each other. Talk to your reeves.
Yep.
Alrighty. Valora, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss as far as teamwork goes? We are kind of crunching for time, so
if you've got more things to talk about, then we can skip the other ones. The idea was just that I made a couple of different team sort of strategies. For those that don't have enough people to play a full 6-man roster, I've got three man on field and like 2 people on field. But if we don't have time, we can. I'll
get you to do a more clean version of those, and we'll throw those on the Phoenix League group page. I'm sure everyone loves the high contrast of green and teal. So we'll get those fixed up, and then we'll throw those on the Phoenix League group page so everyone can check out those later. And stuff like that is what we're going to be talking about moving forward when we're doing our reeve, quote-unquote, reeve boot camp for Phoenix League reeving. So if what Valora was talking about sounds interesting to you, find us for that, and we're going to teach you more about how to make a solid reeve team.
I'd love to find the animated program that they use for like the official clinics, where they actually have like they take a picture of like an ice rink from the top view like you've done, and then they have animations where it shows you, okay, the puck's gone down here, the reeves move or the officials move here when the puck's down here. So if I can find that, I'd love to make some.
We'll talk about that later. Okay, continuing on, the next topic at hand. This is something very, very different. Do you feel that there should be reeve tiers or like levels of reeve to measure the ability of reeves in Amtgard? So, for example, passing a generic Crown Qual's reeves test would make you a level 1 reeve, in that you've completed the base level reeves test. But then there could be higher levels of reeve tests to give you a, rank 2, rank 3, just so we have more separation in our quality of reeves, so we know kind of what we're dealing with.
I would say that sounds more like a solution in search of a problem. First of all, I always tell people this: you don't have to pass a reeves test to actually reeve a game. It's a good idea, but if someone steps up and says, "Yeah, I can reeve this game," I'm not going to say like, "Well, you didn't pass a reeves test, so no," because reeves, people who want to reeve games, they're kind of hard to find sometimes. So if they have that desire to do so, then sure. Second of all, we kind of already have that with the GMR and other reeves. The GMR is in charge of reeves. They're usually allowed to discipline of reeves that don't do a good job or anything like that. But as for levels of reeves, I could see that like just causing more problems than it solves.
So I have, I guess you'll call them two separate versions of reeves. I have people who have passed the reeves test and know how to be a field reeve, and I teach class to make sure that they know how to be a field reeve. But if they want to go above and beyond that, and they want to say, hey, I can actually reeve a tournament, which requires a lot more visuals and eyesight and actually knowing which shots to take and call, I have them do a actual physical component where they actually have to call shots for me. And if they pass that test, then I'll give them a patch saying that they've passed the tournament reeve portion. And so field reeves are anyone that has passed the test. They can go out there, reeve a field, that's fine. They can run for monarchy, that's good. But if they want to show that they've passed this level of, they know which shots are what's considered valid and what's visually and audio, well, via ear as well, then they can pass a separate component. And that's not required at all, and a lot of people just want to do it just to see if they can. But I'll give them a patch to put on their sash as well. So I kind of do that. I kind of do the tier system, but not in the what makes a better reeve. It's just a different type of reeve. Because I have a lot of players who are great field reeves, but would be terrible tournament reeves. And I have a lot of tournament reeves who have no interest in knowing the mechanics of the field.
Do you think having the patch encourages players to want to learn more for the sake of getting the patch?
So I've had it both ways. I've had players want to reeve tournaments because they have the patch. So they're like, oh, well, I've qualified for this. I should reeve this tournament. To which it was actually a lot harder to get people to reeve tournaments because they wanted to be involved in the tournament. And then I've also had players be like, oh, I want to learn how to reeve so I can get this patch. I want to learn how to reeve better to actually qualify for this.
So for me, I can understand for regular Amtgard battle games and for tournaments and stuff like that, the system in place is probably well loved, and it would be hard to implement any sort of tiers easily across such a large span. But I do think, and this is more for the Phoenix League, keeping the Phoenix League in mind and sort of the competitive nature of the Phoenix League when it sort of takes off in a more tournament sort of standing. I do think having it as almost like a competitive sport, it should maybe have a more organized system that I think that would be more beneficial for it. Having a system where it's okay, this is a lower level game, less reeves, maybe level 1 reeves, and then working on training and testing, not just testing, because just testing people, being able to write stuff on a pencil and paper, I agree, isn't necessarily a very good way of judging whether you can move up. In hockey, to be a level 1 reeve, you go to your clinic, good job, you do your test, and it's open book. Congratulations, you know all the rules because the book was in front of you. Level 2, you don't get the book this time. You've got to answer a few more questions, and you've got to have been recommended. You've got to have other officials supervising you and letting you know that you're doing a good job on the ice when you're actually officiating. And then level 3, you're not even allowed to go for your level 3 unless you have been asked by the referee in chief and other high-level supervisor refs of your association. So to be asked to ref at a higher level and be able to band games is kind of a very important earned thing. And it's similar to what she was saying before, where you watch them do things and you see how well they're doing, and then you go, yeah, you know what, you've deserved this. I'd like to see you actually sort of be the ref in these games now. You can do this higher level. So it won't happen immediately, and obviously it's not something that can be implemented quickly, but maybe building something like that up over time would improve the standards of the Phoenix League games to make them even more competitive and more successful across Amtgard.
Chad is saying to have individual parks kind of individual park level be kind of that level 1 and 2, and then the parks can recommend players to kind of be bumped up to a level 3, kind of like what you're saying, where you need kind of the seal of approval from maybe your park GMR or something like that in order to...
Kind of the point of Master Reeve or Paragon Reeve it's that idea of we want to show that you're above the standard of Reeve, and then the idea of Walker of the Middle is even beyond that. It's the concept of having your masterhood means you're top tier in your local area, but having master Reeves the top tier among the master Reeves. I think that was kind of the entire intention of like, here's in the guild of Reeves, here are the hierarchy of the guilds of the master Reeves are the ones that know like more about it, and can reeve higher games, and then the Walker of the Middle is like the top tier.
And Chad is saying some kingdoms don't have a Paragon Reeve or a Master Reeve. And you know what? This ties in perfectly to what the Phoenix League is doing, right? Like, we started this, one of our reasons is because we wanted to create more stepping stones to get to Paragon, right? And same thing here. We want to have more stepping stones to get to, that Walker of the Middle for Reeves as well, because Reeving is a large part of these games, so we want to support them as well as the Paragons, which is why we're doing this. So me personally, I really think that there should be extra levels, extra little encouragement for Reeves to get better. Maybe not levels of Reeves if we don't think that that's necessarily something that'll work, but at least more acknowledgement for Reeves who are putting that effort in there, be it patches, be it, ranks, be it something to show these people care versus these people did a test because they wanted to run for Regent or something.
And I do think that's important too, because you'll go to tournaments and there'll be a Reeve who's paying attention, who's got their eyes there, they're watching the game, and then there'll be the other Reeve on the other side who's watching the birds go by, and it's just like, okay, there's obviously a level difference here. This person really cares about reeving this battle, and the other person really doesn't. So I think there are some stratifications that could be made, and having that positive reinforcement, like much of Amtgard already is. We've got so many ladder awards already. It might not be difficult to make a reeving almost ladder award, if that would make more sense for people who are coming from like an Amtgard perspective, having some type of ladder for reeving.
As far as ladders that lead to anything relevant, Amtgard's pretty happy with what they have right now, but created at a park level, something that doesn't lead to anywhere, that's just a merit for the acknowledgement, those things definitely can be made at a local level and can be used to boost up people and say, hey, you're doing a good job. Thank you for reeving. Now that said, chat is some chat is agreeing with Kaadiart in saying that levels will make it harder to get people to reeve games. In that, I don't quite follow the logic. Kaadiart, do you want to explain that again? Do you think they wouldn't want to reeve because they feel they wouldn't be worthy, or they just didn't want to put the effort to get to the level that people are looking for?
In my experience, reeves are hard to find because everyone wants to play. So you're either going to get a bunch of people who consistently reeve because they like to reeve, or you kind of do like a cycle, like, okay, it's my turn to reeve this week or something like that. I feel that if you really want to reeve games, then you're just going to do it no matter what, and I don't think there should be barriers to doing that. And as for rewarding, not having barriers there, but just rewarding people who do well, well, we kind of already do that, as said in this podcast, with like Walkers in the Middle and Paragon Reeves, if your kingdom supports that.
I think I'm not sure about the kingdoms who don't have Paragon Reeve, but I really like the idea that it's something to work for, and then they're seen as this sort of base of knowledge in your community, and it's not this sort of tier that you have to achieve, but more like you've been acknowledged and you have this standard that you're already on top of. So when you walk onto the field with a Paragon Reeve sash, you come with a bunch of considerations that are already behind you, as opposed to someone who doesn't recognize who you are and coming onto the field. The same way a Master Archer or a Paragon Archer comes into the field and you're like, oh, they know what they're doing. It's not just any archer. It's even if you don't recognize the person, you recognize the sash. And so it's the same thing with Paragon Reeve, of when you walk onto the field with that Paragon sash, you come with the responsibilities and the reputation behind that sash. And I think that's what's needed, in even if it's not a official tiered system, but a recognition of, if you have this, you know what you're doing.
Cool. I like that there's a little bit of divide, and they're all, honestly, they're good views, and it's up to the individual Reeves and the people training their field to decide how they want to go about encouraging people to play Reeve, because at the end of the day, we just want people playing Reeve and them to know their stuff. That said, Salah's having some technical issues, so we're gonna hold on for 1 second, and we're gonna see if he drops all our video. And if he talks to us, we'll know he's back. Okay, it didn't reset everything, so we're good. So, oh, everyone blipped around the place, and everyone in chat just chant salad, 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 salad. Are you back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're fine.
All right, he's back.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. It just I cut out video on everyone, and then the auto went.
He was sitting in the background
But
for a bit. So welcome back.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to add to that? Since I think everyone got to say except you.
Nah, I was a little distracted.
All right. All right. So, we have about five minutes left. Any other questions? I'd rather hit questions than. Yeah, I'd rather hit questions right now if anyone has questions. Let me check the email, see if anyone has sent anything email-wise. Questions? We're going to have to wait about 20 seconds before they actually see this. So, how would I go on to this? Does anyone have any... Moving forward. Oh, hold on. There's a question. Weapon checks. What about weapon checks? They're asking about weapon checks. I believe that's a little outside of the battle game aspect, but I guess let's ask, how do you guys deal with reeving weapons that are, some people says, hey, these are too, this hits too hard. This is not legal. I know with some things where you can check and are obviously illegal, then you can just say, okay, get rid of it. But I'm sure you've all run into situations where someone's like, this is hitting too hard, and it's, where I'm getting at with that?
I say it on safety. If there's a question on the field that it might leave bruises, and I don't want to risk it, and so I'll pull it off just for that, so I can actually check it later. We can test it later, and then if it tends to be fine, we can bring it back on the field after that game. But if there's a question on it, I'm more likely to pull it than not, unless it's a player that I've known that tends to not take harder hits.
Yeah, I've met those players too who complain about everything.
So I side on safety, but I tend to prefer just to test things after.
Safety first is always a good rule. That'll keep people alive and uninjured. We can
As
always...
for how to check weapons, the biggest piece of advice I'll give you is don't shove your thumb or your finger into the tip. Palm of the tip. Otherwise, you'll core the weapon. And yes, it'll be illegal, but it'll be illegal because you made it illegal.
All right. As far just to adjust chat, weapon checks in more detail. That'll be something we'll get into talking about in our Reeve Bootcamp. This stream right now, we're just going to focus on battle games. So if you want to know more about checking weapons in general, keep your eye out for our Reeve Bootcamp and find us there. So let's move on to our last little section, which is Reeving moving forward. What kind of aspirations or hopes or changes or ideas do you guys have for Reeving in the future? How can Reeving improve in Amtgard, and what do we need to do to make that happen? Your own ideas, your own suggestions, your own thoughts.
So during fighter practices that we have at my park, I've tended to start reeve practices. I'll do it visually of just not having people call their own shots or call their own limbs, and then having the reeve like mentally do it for them, and then at the end when everyone's dead, then the reeve will explain what happened. One, it helps with calling shots, but two, it helps them speak up. I've noticed with a lot of reeves, especially when they first start out, they're afraid to call shots, they're afraid to speak, they're afraid to say, hey, that might not have been legit. And when you're doing reeve practice, it actually gives them the validity to speak and actually say something when they think it's valid. And so once they get comfortable speaking and actually calling things, they might actually start doing that on the field. So for new reeves, I actually think that's a great way to get them to build their confidence, is to do it at fighter practice.
That's a really good idea. I actually like that, even though I'm not expressing it for some reason. I'm just watching the screen. Yes, idea. Anyone else have anything you guys?
I know we talked about it a little bit before with like the levels and stuff like that, but it kind of came up a couple of times from like people commenting and what we were saying ourselves, is that it's hard to get people to reeve. And I think one of the main problems is we don't ever have enough reeves, or like it's hard to get enough reeves to reeve a large game or tournaments, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe setting up some sort of system, whether it's levels or awards or candy, as it's called, just something to encourage people to pick up the torch and be like, yeah, I want to be good at this, and I want to actually pay attention and be there. I don't want to just be a token reeve. I want to be reeving, and I want to be important on field and really stand for what the gold sash means. I think that's maybe something to look into for the future, because I think it's important to get more people out there reeving. I think it would help.
We do swag. So anytime someone passes my test as KGMR, they get the gold sash with a patch on it with Westmarch. And then when I have a teaching a class that I've been going on to each of the parks, and basically your basic how to reeve, and then they can take the test, get the sash. And then when I'm done with that, I'm having the GMRs tell me who's been reeving, how many times in the field. And then based on the numbers of battle games they reeve, I'll give them a belt favor, or I will give them a bound rule book, depending on how many times they've reeved in the course of whatever span period. And I mean, it's a lot of resources on my part, but it creates a culture, and it creates something, a higher bar for the next GMR to set. And so it starts the idea of, hey, I could reeve because there's reasons to do it. And once they actually get in there, they seem to actually like it. It's a lot easier once you actually step in and start reeving than you continue doing it.
Kaadiart, Salad, these are basically we're going to be your last words on the topic for now. Do you have anything to contribute?
I'm good, actually.
Yeah, all right.
I don't think I have anything to say.
Alrighty then. So it's a 9:01. That's a pretty good time. So I would just like to thank our four guests here today, Valora, Kaadiart, Elysia, and Salad, for coming to join us. I hope you guys learned a lot about reeving. There is infinitely more to talk about on this subject. You can leave comments at the bottom of this video if you're watching it in the future, or you can go to our Phoenix League group page and ask stuff there. If you know them in person, reach out to them, ask them questions. If the interest comes up, we will do one of these again with different people, with whoever. This is a continuing thing for the Phoenix League. We want to keep educating you guys, and hopefully seeing more reeves come out and want to be officials for Amtgard. If this was something you liked, please like it and share it afterwards. Thank you all for watching this, and if you want to find out what our next Phoenix League live thing is going to be, go over to the Phoenix League group page and post what you want it to be, and then we'll pick from those. So thank you again to everybody, and see you next time. Bye, guys! Bye!
Somebody save your soul, 'cause you've been sinning in the city. I know too many troubles, all these lovers got you losing control. You like a drug to me, a luxury, my sugar and gold. I want the good life every good night, you're a hot one to hold. come out.